What do you think the prognosis is for weather, climate, and short term? Rarely do we see so much activity in the troposphere. So the troposphere is very near to a cave-in where it will descend through the what? The heliosphere. The heliosphere, what the heck is that? The heliosphere, my dear, is the newest version of the inspiration of the concentration of the solar tidal wave. So the solar tidal wave will be like a incoming blast of energy that will attack the intervening layers of the atmosphere that have been protecting the Earth from the radioactivity of the ionosphere. Because the ionosphere is there to collect the radiation that will irradiate the state of the world. In other words, if the ionosphere were not there, there would be a lack of radioactive material to enable the transmission of the radio waves and telescopic radioactive approach to communication, not only in the satellites, but on parts of the Earth as well. And so, for you, what this means is that there will be a spell of internal disarray in the magnosphere. So what is the magnosphere, you ask me? This is the internal mechanism of the magnetic forces that maintain the continual thrust on the polar activity. And so if the magnosphere becomes irradiated with the solar flares that puncture the ionosphere and enter into the troposphere, then there will be hell to pay. And so the hell that you will pay is to stay away from the stratosphere because you don't want to be striated in the ensuing burst of energy that will decimate the balance of the energy. What I'm trying to say in simple language, honey, is that the solar activity is destined to interact with the depleted energy of the atmosphere that would clear it away and will instead cause a very, very strong boreal display, which will indicate that there is going to be a lot of interference in the inner core of the earth, you see. This disturbance in the inner core is a factor in the content of the distribution of the a dated material here of the fundamental reality of the continuity of the world you know, because there will be a stream of energy released from down below that will go into the dated material again into the canopy overhead, you see, and it will cause more precipitation and less trust on gated area of caveman mentality. In other words, the feedback loop is very strong. And because the feedback loop is so strong between the incoming solar energy and the magnetic core, there will be more disturbance in the atmosphere that will result in greater inundations of the places where the People already tear their hair and say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's going to continue to drench them and cause a lot of despair. Okay, let me see if I'm figuring this out. You're saying something about when the solar flares send energy into the earth, that somehow it will be able to, a stream of energy will be able to get through that might not otherwise have got through because of something that has happened in the levels of the atmosphere. And that it is going to actually, because we have a magnetic core, I guess, that is actually going to affect the electromagnetism. Would that be a correct word to say or not? No, not the electromagnetism, honey, just the magnetic core. And that would cause more tendency of the earth to shave off a little time for the earth to rhyme its other systems, you see, because even a very, very, very slight change in the magnetic core can affect more systems than you realize. And this contributes to the tendency of the streams of energy to deposit a lot of moisture in the pockets that are receptive to the rainfall that must fall because of the atmospheric rivers that are a result of the inability of the rain to form in certain areas because they no longer conform to the patterns that were established through the millennia. And so there is a lack of ability for the areas of drought to be inundated by the moisture laden air that will simply pass overhead because it cannot coalesce into the rain that will fall until it falls, you might say, into an atmospheric pressure that will press it into raindrops, as you would think of it, that will fall to the ground. There has to be the right conditions for the rain to drops to coalesce and for there to be a best case scenario. So the best case scenario will only be in a stretch of land that will not be near the sea. And this stretch of land will be returned to a vital place for humanity to thrive. However, in order to arrive at an understanding of the processes in place, there would have to be a willingness to get a new point of view, and this requires you to let go of your current point of view, because you can't get a new point of view unless you let go of your current point of view. Are you talking to me specifically? No. I am talking to the ones who will listen to you, that they have to let go of their current point of view to get a new point of view. Okay, this is something I do periodically. I just try to reverse thinking just so I can see it from a different side, and that helps to let go of any preconfirmatory biases, any preconceptions that are blocking the ability to see what's really going on. So if you can drop whatever belief structure you have and just reverse it, in my experience, it suddenly opens up a whole new vista that you can, it opens up the bay window so you can look out and you can see things as they are rather than as you believe them to be, because you can block an awareness of what's going on because you have these preconceptions and you will block anything that does not agree with them, right? Yes. So it goes back to beginner's mind. Get beginner's mind and look at it again. Pretend that you don't even know what's going on. Drop all your preconceptions, as you call them, your preconfirmatory biases, and look at the evidence from a completely neutral point of view. And this will tell you that what we say is true. So if you're one of those scientists who refuses to consider that there are factors unknown to you that could be affecting what you see and what you do, then it behooves you to get back to beginner's mind and to say, I'm going to forget everything they taught me, everything I thought I knew, and I am going to look anew at the evidence. And I'm not going to eschew any of the evidence because it does not match my preconceptions, you see? Right. Okay, so there's a feedback loop, is what you're telling me, between the sun and the core of the earth. It not only affects the core of the earth, but the core of the earth then comes back, affects the atmosphere. Does that affect the sun? No. Okay, I just had to ask that to have beginner's mind. So what is coming back from the core of the earth does affect the atmosphere. That is from the magnetic core, I assume you mean. And it is affecting what's going on in the atmosphere because there are, okay, I'm not sure about these words because I'm not a scientist, but there are ionized particles. No, that would not be the term we would use. It will respond to the inherent atomic structure of the various configurations in the air. So the atomic structure will vary, honey, according to the composition of the chemical composition, in the air. And that will result in a limitation on the carrying capacity of the moisture-laden air. And it will continue to slide down the slippery slope, you might say, of the hills into the valleys and the ponds of the topography of the atmospheric composition and corresponding pressure, you see. This is a little complicated to explain to someone who doesn't understand this very well. Hopefully others will dwell on it a bit and come to see the cartography of the invisible realm of the air space is being rearranged as we speak. And this rearrangement of the topography of the airspace is the race against time, because the time is running short and you will not be able to pull apart the factors that are causing things to come apart, because it is too complex, my dear. It is too complex. The complexity of this is inherently manipulated through the access to any of its parts, you see. And so all the parts have to be coordinated to maintain the stability. And although a limited numbers of human beings on the earth who dig into the dirt or choose to fly through the atmosphere will not cause the balance to disappear, the sheer number of footprints on the face of the earth have caused a dearth of trust on the magnetic core and the various systems that depend on it. And so you might say, although the focus of the inquiry today is the amount of CO2 in the air, the truth is that it is the magnetic core that is more significant in the way that it will cause the Earth atmosphere to bob and sway and to play in a different way that will cause the disintegration, shearing, say that again. The disturbance in the climates on the earth, you see. This is eventually going to result in the wandering of the magnetic poles that will cause the holes that have maintained somewhat of a balance for the earth to give way, and there will be hell to pay. There will be hell to pay. And this is how the people will come to see that they really didn't know love at all. They really didn't know love at all because they let their trust on God fall through the trust on the ego, you see, because the ego does not know love at all. The ego does not know love at all, and therefore the ego must eventually topple of its own weight, you see. It must topple of its own weight. And because the current world societies have trusted on the ego and their ability to create a haven for duplicity, mendacity, and ignorance, you see, they must pay in the usual way. And the usual way that you pay is that you have to give back what you took. You have to give back what you took. And so they'll have to give back their cities and their capital improvements will have to be destroyed, you see, in order to give the capital back to the sea. And so the capitals of many a country will fail to pay their taxes, you see, because they have taxed humanity to the brink of destruction, you see, and in so doing, they have taxed the ability of the world to sustain their Ponzi scheme, because it's a Ponzi scheme, honey, that they would be able to keep getting rich off the earth, you see, and in the end, the system would collapse, but their hope was that they would get out scot-free. They will not get out scot-free, you see, because you know very well that they will have to go below and pay the price for their sins, you see, for their sins are the sins of the one who begins again to climb the ladder of evolution. And they will have to go to the bottom of the evolutionary chain in order to regain their trust on love, you see, because love is the ultimate reality and love will always sustain you. But love is not a Ponzi scheme. The ego is trusting on its ability to escape the end of its reign, you see, because it will just reign and reign and reign until there is no more terrain that can be occupied by the people who refuse to regain their trust on God, you see. And of course, I will take care of those who trust on me, but the others will be lost in the rising sea because they will have to rise up to see what they couldn't see on earth, you see. When they get to heaven, they'll get another point of view because they will be forced to. But in the meantime, those on earth who choose to get a new point of view will understand what you and I do here today. We say, this is the way. This is the way home, people. Don't trust on the ego today. Come back to love. It's the only way. And love will not cause you to lose your home, you see, because the home of love resides with me, and I cannot be lost in the rising sea. However, the ego fears the rising sea because once you can see clearly, the ego will disappear. It will just disappear, and you will appear in a new world, you see, where you will be my loving child, and I will be your loving father, and we will restore the garden to its former glory when the earth was so pristine, you see, that the rivers ran clear and fed my deer with the fruit that hung from the trees. And the birds would sing as the leaves fluttered in the breeze. And this is the world I give to you. This is the world I give to you and to all those who come back to me. To those who trust on the false reality of the Ponzi scheme, they will be submerged in the rising sea because the bridge to paradise is built on the interlocking blocks of energy of the ones who come together in the new community and say, hey, what can I do for you today? What can I do for you today? Not, how can I use you to build up my resume? How can I use you to build up my bank account? How can I use you to build up my ego today? But how can I help you to help me to live in peace and harmony with you, with the world, and with God, you see? And this is the trinity that will come to be after the ego is washed away in the rising sea, and the world you see will be returned to its natural beauty. And it's okay if you build a house today that is different than the natural forest that shelters the deer. However, if you, my dear, do not stay connected to me, then I can't tell you where to build your house. And if you build it on shifting sand, then I can't play my hand to save you, you see, because you chose to ignore me. But I will show you how to build your house on a rock that will not go tick-tock like a stick of dynamite that is about to be lit because you did sit on your hands and say, not my problem today, not my problem today. It is your problem today. If you hear this, it is your problem today. If you cannot play in a nice way with others, how do you play in a nice way with others? You say, I will not use you for my own benefit. I will not use you to make me feel important, you see. I will not use you to make me think that I am safe from the powers that be, because the powers that be, you see, will sweep away our home as easily as a child knocks over a pile of wooden blocks. Be well, my children, be well, but don't sell your soul to the highest bidder. Just keep it, and you will reap the benefits of the promises you keep. For those of you who've made promises that you didn't keep, the promises will keep until you're ready to fulfill them, you see. But the longer you wait to fulfill your promises, the more difficult it will be. So I suggest you keep your promises. Keep your promises to each other and to me, because you see, we need to work together and we need to be able to trust on each other, or you will be part of the Ponzi scheme and you will scream when all of your investments go down the drain because you invested in the ego, you see, and not in God energy. Yes. Thank you, God.